Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, we're going to talk about the comeback versus Forest and a bit of the chaos going on here at the end of the window, including the goalkeeper situation, midfield options, left back injuries, and where United are at as of now. So let's get into it. All right, so, obviously at the weekend was a rather interesting game. United going down 2-0 very early. And, the main thing I want to talk about there is that I was speaking on this last week when it comes to these injuries and things, and now there's another with Rafael Varane picking up a muscle injury, though that's not unexpected. It feels like there's a lack of preparedness at United, a lack of preparation. There's something wrong. Because you don't walk into a game against Forest asleep and give up 2 goals by accident. After a week where there's muscle injuries left and right that look very serious, and these things happening. There's been, to me, fitness issues, things like that. There's an unpreparedness. There's a preparation that has to be lacking where they're not ready. I know it wasn't a long time, but United didn't even play. Those first 5 minutes, they were asleep. The way it was organized on the corner was horrendous. I mean, horrendous. We saw that back years ago against Istanbul. And it was like, oh, well, it's Ollie and it's the coaching. And, look at how bad the coach is that this happens. Except it just happened in the Premier League. And there's just a lack of preparedness and the preparation is wrong. Something has to change on that, and I'm sure they'll sort it out. But obviously there was a few changes with Anthony Martial coming into the center. Besides going down 2, I thought United actually then played pretty well. I think we played better versus a low block than we used to. It doesn't look like we create a lot of chances. Even though the XG, I think United are top of the league right now in expected goals. But one of the things that you'll see, and that you've seen a lot. I mean, 2 things happen here. One is that finally, Erik ten Hag, and he deserves a little bit of blame for this. Put Marcus Rashford on the left. Whatever you do, how many times have we been clamoring for it? Put Rashford back on the left, and he will produce. An assist for the first goal, just driving by the defender at speed. When he gets those spaces and he can isolate a fullback one-on-one, he is one of, if not the most dangerous winger in England. And I think that was what proves it. He takes him on, gets to the byline, sends that low cross in, the thing we've been begging for goal number 1, an easy goal, a tap in. Christian Eriksen is there to put it in. Goal number 2 was just a very clever play. Amazing pass from Rashford into Bruno, who heads it over to Casemiro, who scores. That was just exceptional. An amazing play by Rashford to accomplish that. And then for the third goal, once again, gets isolated on the fullback, draws a foul, which it very clearly was a foul, and gets a penalty, which Bruno puts away. And it is that simple, funnily enough. It's like, I know you want a lot of team goals, and I do too. And I get concerned at times that that game was carried still by Rashford and Bruno, the same as ever. But they are our 2 best players, in my opinion. So I'm not super against it. They should be kind of carrying us to some degree. And it's a good strategy. I mean, that was the thing in the first 2 games. When I looked at the spaces that Garnacho had on the left, I'm saying, look, in a few years, he'll be incredibly dangerous in those spaces. Right now, you put Marcus Rashford in those spaces, and 2 things will happen. Number 1, he's going to win those one-on-one battles. Maybe not every single one, but he's going to win enough of them. Number 2, you're going to force the defense to stretch because the fullback is not going to be able to leave him alone. They're going to stay much tighter to him than if it's somebody else. And that opens up spaces elsewhere. And that's how you beat these low blocks. That's how you beat these defenses, So I was very happy to see that, because I think that was just the game changer. I thought the movement was good. The intensity was a bit better. It really, again, fell off once we took the lead, even though they went down to 10 men, and that's concerning. And there is certainly, an attitude thing. But, there's nothing I can fault for Bruno really driving the team forward, putting it on his back, really put in a captain's performance to drag back for that 2-0 to a 3-2. And we needed it. I had concerns going into the week that somehow we were going to lose this game and that, something's just wrong right now. And the start kind of showed that. And, it's like those are the games where you either capitulate or fix up. And now, obviously, going into Arsenal, it's good to have that comeback, but we can't show that kind of unpreparedness. We have to show that middle mentality the entire time. And so anyway, it was good to see. I think there's still some improvements that you're seeing. I thought it was improved in a more against a low block, way more improved than against Wolves in terms of how we played against a low block. One of the things where it looks like we don't create a lot of chances is the lack of a striker. There was many, corners that we should have scored off of, balls into the box from Bruno, from Wan-Bissaka, from others that came into really dangerous areas, and there was no striker there. And that's a huge thing where, you don't see that. It doesn't add to your chances created. It doesn't look like anything. But when you have a guy, a big physical body who will get in there and attack the ball, then those chances will start to come through. So I'm excited to see that. Rasmus Højlund should be on the bench for Arsenal. I don't think he will start, but he should be on the bench for Arsenal, and I think it'll be essentially the same team, with, of course, the injury to Rafael Varane with Lindelof. But I think it'll be the same team otherwise, most likely. Moving forward, on goalkeeper, obviously this was an area that we've been talking about for a while, that Erik ten Hag did not want to have Dean Henderson around. His sale to Crystal Palace now looks complete for something in the range of £20 million. A pretty decent deal, all things considered, following a very significant loan and injury that he had that kept him out for quite a long time. That was something concerning a lot of prospective buyers. United have then brought in the young Turkish goalkeeper as a replacement. So that's it. Tom Heaton stays, backup goalkeeper. That's it. That's kind of what we expected there. One out, one in. Two out with De Gea leaving and Onana coming in. That's a bit what we expected there. So that business is pretty much done. In terms of the midfield, obviously one of the things here is the options. And one of the things that's come out and kind of been confirmed is that perhaps Sofyan Amrabat isn't the top of our list. And this is something I heard some weeks ago, where previously I thought, yeah, Sofyan Amrabat, nailed on. He is top of our list. And I started saying, hang on a second. I'm hearing now that maybe he isn't. And, that they view Mainu as a 6, and they have this whole kind of long-term plan. And it's challenging. Like, this is a challenging thing to discuss. It's a bit confusing, because on one hand, I've talked about this a lot in terms of my perspective on transfers, and regardless of individual players, my perspective is you buy starters at a club like United. You buy starters, or you buy really high potential youth players. Starters or youth or high potential young players like Højlund. Mount's a starter. Onana's a starter. We've been buying like this. Casemiro. Again, in Eriksen, we bought a starter, but not a top player. And you can see after a year, he's pretty much a depth player. And that's what happens. It's not a bad thing. But at the time, at least, he was a starter. Lisandro Martinez. We've made good choices there in buying starters, so that we don't have all this dead wood, because that's how we ended up with this glut of center backs and midfielders that we weren't using. Things like that is buying depth. And so I understand the reticence from the club or from the team to say, let's buy Amrabat, who we're not planning on starting him because we're not playing that way. We're going to start Mason Mount. So Amrabat's going to be rotation, but he's not going to block Kobbie Mainoo, so he's going to play in those minutes where Casemiro and Bruno aren't playing, except Casemiro and Bruno are like never injured, and Kobbie Mainoo may play next to Casemiro. There's a lot of thoughts to go through on this, to where you could see Amrabat being a player who's brought in that ends up in the future not playing much, because they're going to want a big long-term, other starter type caliber player in a more advanced position like a Mount or a Bruno. And so it's a little tricky, and that's why when we were hearing names like Onana from Everton and things like that, it makes more sense. But I think that's the challenge. I don't think he 100% fits what they want in terms of a purchase. And what I've been told, not saying he's not a target and they still might not get him, but what I've been told at this point in time is that they're still in pursuit of this midfielder, but someone has to leave, and I'm not really talking about Van de Beek on loan for a little, at minimum for them to get someone in and a buy. If McTominay goes, they will replace him. That much is for sure. If McTominay goes, they could buy Amrabat, and then next year they would have to still get somebody else. But if McTominay goes, they'll buy someone. But if McTominay doesn't go, and it's not likely that he does at this point in time, then it's kind of going down to the wire, but the interest is still there on both Amrabat and Gravenberch. And United aren't the only clubs interested in both of them, and that's part of what's being played up in the news and media, I think, is that there's other clubs in the market for Amrabat, including, Liverpool and some other places, maybe, even though they've denied it. And it's going to come down to the wire. United are still exploring the potentiality of a loan. And I think that is a more realistic prospect at this point in time, is getting someone like Gravenberch or Amrabat potentially, but in on a loan. That way they can see how they do, and next summer they could still go big in the midfield. I'm not saying I agree with all of this. This is Glazernomics, and it's if you ever had doubts about who's running the transfer window, you shouldn't have doubts anymore. It's the Glazers. Nobody's pulling the strings from behind the scenes here. It's the Glazers. The worry is, if we buy now, will we get to buy again next summer? Or will they say, no, you've got Mainu, you've got Amrabat, you have Eriksen on another year. Even if you shift McTominay and Van de Beek, who are both still here, you've got 5 midfielders and youth players and Hannibal and Gore. You're not buying more. And that is the way that they think. And so the issue is sell to buy is in the midfield is out. Can we get a loan? If they perform really well, we could buy them next year. That's the thought on it. And then Højbjerg is someone that was offered by agents. That doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but I don't think United will spend 30 million on him. Again, if a loan becomes available, then I could see it also being an option they would look at. But right now, I think it's more realistic that someone comes in on loan than they purchase someone without any sort of significant sale. And if you're asking what happened to the money from Kovar, from Henderson, from all that, well, that paid down the 170 million that was spent to bring it back to about 120, 130 million, spend in the window. That was essentially funding the overpays on Højlund, and where we ended up spending more than probably planned. I'm, again, not agreeing with it, but I'm explaining this is, when you think through the finances of how the Glazers operate in the windows, you have to think with the money, not what the team needs. And you have to start thinking with that a little bit more. And that is the issue right now. And then it gets more concerning. And part of it is, I think, that as well, just to go back to this for really quickly, if there weren't the injuries to Mount, then I think it would be a bit different. I think people will take anybody because of the injury to Mount, because we don't have a lot of options, because it's Eriksen starting and McTominay first off the bench. We should have kept Fred in this case. You know what I mean? This is why I was like, why not keep him for a year, let his contract expire next year? And another thing on that, I spoke about this on the Real Reds Talk video, but I actually don't think I mentioned it here. People say, well, we sold Fred. Why? That should fund a move for another midfielder. Not so. One of the reasons I didn't expect Fred to be sold is there's a lot of clauses in players' contracts when you activate that +1. If you sell them during that +1, they get a big portion of that fee, because the idea behind these +1s, it's not quite so simple. There's a lot of little details and things that get negotiated into those +1s. And one of the clauses that's actually fairly common is when a +1 is activated by the club unilaterally, where the player doesn't have a say in it, which a lot of contracts have, that if you sell them, they are going to get a portion of that fee, because the idea is they could have walked for free and gotten a bigger sign-on bonus and all of that, but you activated that just so you could profit off of them, and that's not really what the +1 is for. So they activated the +1, sold them for 10 million euros up front. Fred got half that. So that was only a 5 million euro sale. Very, very little profit in that. So it really didn't fund much for United. And that's why my thinking was, I don't get it. Personally, I would have kept him for another year so you have another depth player in there so you can make your big signing next summer in the midfield. Get in a top player next summer in the midfield, because that's obviously not going to happen this year. Not that I don't think we need a midfielder, because we do. And I really want someone, but this is, you know, all the things you have to start to try to figure out. And thinking with United's strategy in the market, and when you factor in the Glazers and their financial things, it gets really confusing. And obviously the compounding issue here is now with an injury to Luke Shaw that looks apparently quite significant. And he might be out until December at this point. Tyrell Malaysia is apparently out to the same period of time. We have no left back. They were about to sell Alvaro Fernandez, and now probably he can't go. We have Dallo and Wan-Bissaka and Fernandez. And if one of them gets hurt, Alvaro Fernandez is starting. Dallo's injury history isn't the best either, but it means they're going to have to play every second of every game too. And now our center back and Rafael Varane is injured, which means we have less center back cover, which means if Lisandro Martinez has to go to left back to cover that, then you have only 2 fit center backs in Lindelof and Maguire. It's a mess. So this is part of the reason why they were reticent to let someone go, because they need to sign, again, and this I agree with, they need to sign Varane's potential replacement, and that is likely to come next year. Next year, big midfielder, big center back, and then depending on how the whole right wing situation pans out with Antony, how Højlund pans out, and how Dallo and Wan-Bissaka pan out, another right back. But that's it, actually, if you look at it. And to some degree, the positives are, because we've bought big, great players, that you're looking at not needing that many numerous number of people next year if things go according to even half-decent plan. But right now they need a loan for left back, and that's an unexpected and incurred expense. It's going to cost a few million for a fee and a few million for wages, and that's money down the drain, essentially. So that's why, you know, I'm not super optimistic of a signing. And the left back thing, you know, there's a lot of reports on it. Andy Mitten said there's a hell of a lot of agents offering people around, and that is true. I don't think all the options are legitimate. I don't know who they're going to end up with, quite honestly. I have no clue at this point in time. I wouldn't be surprised to see Cucurella. I think that one is a legitimate link. I wouldn't be surprised to see Tagliafico, and I don't think that one would be very good. But that's what we'll see, and I think that we'll play Dallo and Wan-Bissaka until and they'll be used as a depth until one of the left backs come back, rather than playing a lot, and so they don't want to spend too much on it. And finally, I've said this a few times, but it has been for quite a while, sell to buy. That is the issue. That's what's going on. That's where things are at. It is sell to buy. And so when they sell a goalkeeper, they bought a goalkeeper. Yes, they have more money, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily going elsewhere. That's just not how they're thinking right now. They've got to make a loan in for left back. We have to sell if we're going to buy anyone else, and there's not a lot of time left. So I think that from what I hear, the talks are ongoing with representatives around. Gravenberch and Amrabat are the 2 main names in the midfield on that, and obviously Højbjerg being offered, but those 2 main names. And they're still hoping that there's a potentiality for some kind of late last-second loan type of situation. So we'll see if that occurs, but I don't think they'll be making a purchase unless we sell somebody else. And that's just where it is right now. Okay, so that's what I have for today. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn your notifications on, and I will see you in the next one.